Hey, you, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are having a great weekend. So, wanted to talk a little bit today with you all about Andrew Yang and who possibly will be his running mate. So, over the last few weeks, I've been speaking with many people about Andrew Yang and who they felt should be his running mate. Know it probably still too early as the debates are just going to be taking off, which Andrew Yang will be participating in. He is officially on the debate schedule, but it kind of makes us imagine who his running mate's going to be. So let's talk a little bit about who it could possibly be. What are some of you all's hopes on who it will be, and see what we come up with. So Andrew Yang is gaining quite a bit of traction with his universal basic income platform, which he's now changed to the freedom dividend, which I think makes a great deal of sense because of the stigma we've long associated socialism with universal basic income and those type things. And misunderstood the context of socialism in the framework of universal basic income. As in universal basic income, everybody across the board gets the same amount of money. It's no special treatment. It's no taken from the rich, given to the poor directly. It's everybody gets it, right? So we're looking at some of the Democratic presidential hopefuls, right? A lot of governors, a lot of congressmen. Here's Bernie Sanders, who a lot of people would like to see as Andrew Yang's running mate. Some people have said they would love to see Bernie Sanders, either Andrew Yang as the vice president of Bernie Sanders, or either Bernie Sanders as Andrew Yang's vice president. For some people, that would be a perfect match, a match made in heaven. So, what are the chances of this happening? Would we see something like this? And would it be a good idea to see something like this? So let's just see what we come up with. So, what are the difference between Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang? Well, Andrew Yang is more so, it appears to me to be more focused on the reality of math, right? The numbers, the economy, the economics, right? And if I had to divide these two individuals, then I would say Bernie Sanders is more focused on social justice, what ought to be done, what we should do. Whereas I kind of look at Andrew as more so, this is what makes sense. This is what's possible, and this is probably what's more viable. Now, both of these gentlemen could balance each other out well. That is very much true. They could balance each other out, and it could be just this dynamic policy. But when we look at both of these gentlemen, I think the one thing that can be missing is that I see them so much on the same path to a degree, but they when it comes to other elements of what it takes to run a government, I think in some cases there's going to be balance needed, right? There's going to be the necessity and the ability for people in this cabinet to reach across aisles. You know, the best leader is the leader that can unite as well. You know, we have a bicameral government, and it's just not like and so being able to unite people, being able to deal with the more so centrist, the more so people who are Republicans, but more resemble Democrat types. It's going to be necessary for people like Andrew Yang to reach across that. And I guess what I'm saying too is when I look at Andrew Yang, I don't necessarily in a clear way see him as a Democrat, right? I see him as a needed politician for a needed time. And so who he picks and who serves his campaign, it might not just be about being a Democrat so much as it might be about being a good politician. So it'll be somebody who I think, or it probably would work better if it's somebody who serves the interests of uniting the American people, at least to the degree to which a lot of things and a lot of work can get done in Washington, D.C. And with him and Bernie together, I think that's going to make it a lot more difficult to achieve that. But I like the idea. I know a lot of people like that idea. They seem to be a match made in heaven. But I'm definitely more for Andrew Yang's politics than Bernie Sanders' politics. And I think also that's why you're starting to see a lot of Trump supporters come over to Andrew Yang's side, something you will never see happen with Bernie Sanders' campaign. So very interesting to think about who we're gonna get in this, in this as Andrew's running mate. Now, one lady that has come up also that many of the people I spoke with who they'd like to see has been. Well, I'm going to get to Tosi in a moment, but it's been this woman here, Marianne Williamson. And interesting enough, her and Andrew were on a interview together, or they were both in a conversation together as both candidates for 2020. And it was just so fantastic to see two presidential candidates get along so well to come together and have a conversation without there needing to be a debate or anything like that. And they're just pretty much in agreement, and they're sharing their variety of ideas and what's needed in America. And that to me, it just shows they were just so natural together and just so lovely together, like many of you all pointed out, that you look at this and you go, well, somebody like this would work very well in Andrew Yang's cabinet someplace. Now, a lot of people are saying something like Andrew Yang as president, Marianne Williamson as vice president, and of course that looks great as well on paper, right? That looks fantastic. I would say that Marianne definitely needs to be somewhere in Andrew Yang's cabinet. She has such a warm heart and is such a very spiritual aware person. She was recently on the Breakfast Club, which is becoming a type of political hotspot for Democratic candidates for 2020. And a very big topic came up that I think a lot of people aren't seeing or aren't aware of, or they're not really paying attention to it. But it's reparations for the African American community in the United States, and this is a very complicated topic. It's one that these candidates get asked, and some of them have kind of been under the gun about not how to answer these questions and how to deal with the questions. And somebody like Marianne Williamson, who was able to give a specific plan, and it was something like a few $100 million or $500 million. What compare it to the reparations estimates that some people have made that could be up in the trillions and trillions of dollars. And the reason that this is can be a dangerous question for candidates is because the African American vote could be, possibly at stake with that. And so I think it has to be, conducted carefully about how they deal with the sensitivity of that. Because at the end of the day, I think it's not so much just about the money or making a payment or how much the U.S. government would have to pay out, but just the acknowledgement and the gesture. And even by her just offering $100 or $200 million or whatever the price was, it brought a lot of African American voters on her side. And those voters in the minority based groups are going to be very important in this election as vote wise. And so, they want to make sure that they are prepared for such questions, and that, at the very least, a gesture of full support is given, because what it seems like and what it appears to be is that they don't want to address it. They don't want to deal with it. And I can understand many candidates' position on that, as they're trying to onboard more voters from, there's a lot of people on the fence. And the reality of it is that, as human beings, we're not always very altruistic people. We tend to focus on. I'll give you this example. I just say it this way, and try to put it in perspective. Somebody like Marianne Williamson, and why she's somebody to really pay close attention to, and why she's a serious candidate now. But I was listening to a talk from some famous person, and they were talking about, in America, one of the most important things we could fight is aging and disease, and that people like Bill Gates was doing research over in Africa to stop AIDS and various things like that, but that they didn't care about research being done over in Africa to help people of African descent from contracting AIDS and a variety of things. It's not that so much that they didn't care, but they wanted something that helped them, right? And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is that from the perspective of the voter, and many voters and many people who may be unaffected by certain specific situations that don't encompass the broad scope of America, even if it's fair, even if it's just, even if it's right, that we all as Americans fight injustice and aim to correct injustice and stop it. That from the human psyche, a lot of people are going to move towards the vote for things that benefit them in particular the most, right? So candidates, especially candidates that are coming over who are on the fence, independents, people coming in, they're more so going to want to vote for policies that directly affect them and not someone else. And that's kind of how I look at it. Although what Marianne Wilson did was she did offer that gesture. Now, some people were glad looking at that as a start. Other people looked at it like it was nothing. It was peanuts on the table. But the most important thing was that she was able to now pull a lot of African American votes to her side, if not all of them, the majority of them now, to her side, because she made that gesture. And so somebody like her in Andrew Yang's cabinet, which I'm very optimistic about, because Andrew Yang, their chemistry was so good in that interview. I think Andrew Yang and her would be able to work together on something. Whereas I look at Andrew Yang's policies doing great for Americans across the board. He's giving that $1,000 per month. $1,000 extra dollars per month is going to be very significant to people, right? And a lot of people don't quite understand how significant it is because they don't look at the data of what's happening now. But the data what's happening now is less. 80% of Americans can't afford a $500 emergency right now for the most part. So that means like every American needs, extra money per month. They need a universal basic income. That's just the reality of the situation, right? So it's kind of weird that most Americans will be against that. And I would say that most Americans aren't against that, that most Americans are going to vote for that. So that's why it's important to get Andrew Yang in there to deal with these benefits. But I think Marianne Williamson working with him would be a great situation. So let's move back up to Tulsi and see what's happening with Tulsi. So Tulsi's a big is widely supported as one of Andrew Yang's running mates. And what's so awesome about Miss Tulsi Gabbard is it's not so much they want her to be the president or the vice president, but they are in support of her being something like Secretary of State, and I think that makes a lot of sense because Tosi has spent quite a bit of time in Iraq, Afghanistan. She's actually one of the only candidates who's actually served in the armed forces, which is very important when you become the commander in chief. That I think it's always good that you have a understanding of how the military works, but as well have people around you who do, because you're going to need to be able to deal with the troops. Foreign policy is going to be very important. That's going to be very huge in the debates if you're weak on foreign policy, and so you're gonna need people around you that are going to be able to address those problems that voters are going to have when we get in these tough spots, in these bad situations, on how to deal with them. So a lot of people are saying Tulsi Gabbard would be great as a Secretary of State. Where I am very optimistic with a lot of these candidates people want to see is that they do work well together. I could definitely see some kind of situation with Andrew Yang, Marianne Williamson, and Tulsi Gabbard. Now, I don't know what positions they'll hold. I don't know if vice president would be best for Marianne Williamson. I don't know if, or Tulsi Gabbard, right? But I do think they all would be great in that cabinet. What I come up with in the end, for myself, is that it probably will be more likely that Andrew Yang's running mate will end up being probably somebody that we aren't very much aware of, right? It probably will be a congressman or a governor or some local politician, because that's going to be very important next. That a lot of these people we've mentioned don't have any formal political experience, right? They haven't probably served in any major offices. And so it's probably going to be that Andrew might go after some governor. He might go after some mayor. He may go after some congressman or senator, someplace in the policies. And maybe these people will be more on how to navigate Washington, D.C., because that's another thing we leave out, that the election is only the first part. That once you get there, now you got to deal with how to deal with all these politicians across the aisle that are going to block you on every turn and every move that you make. And you're going to have to have a negotiator, right? You're going to have a person who knows how to speak the language of both sides, knows how to cut deals, negotiate deals, so we don't have government shutdowns, so we don't have all these crazy things happening like we've been having the last several administrations. So, in that paradigm, my view is it's probably going to be somebody we don't know a whole lot about, but in the confines of Washington, D.C., has done some good work, has been able to unite people. So because I think that's going to be very important. But all very exciting stuff. I like the stuff I'm hearing. I feel these people got a very good chance of winning. A lot of people are saying things like, oh, this is a ridiculous notion. Somebody like Andrew Yang, he won't win on the universal basic income platform. People like Marianne Williamson, it's just they're never going to win on pushing ideas like reparations. But we have seen some strange things happen, in our politics, right, that we thought couldn't happen. So it might not be so far-fetched. And I think a lot of people are beginning to see that and understand that now. And I think the voters are going to make their voices heard in this 2020 election. So looking forward for these debates. All going to be very interesting to watch. Guys, tell me all what you think, who you like to see. A lot of you have already told me who you'd like to see, but I guess we're on the subject now. Those of you who haven't, maybe you can mention some people we don't know about as well that's doing good work in Washington. Maybe you can tell us about, what, as far as the foreign policy and immigration, what would be some of your viewpoints on that and what you'd like to see presidential candidate Andrew Yang do. But that's all I want to say in this video. If you all like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe. Also, we have our own universal basic income program over the blockchain, where we're uniting citizens of the world to create basic needs for people outside of any government intervention over the blockchain, making it so every human on the planet deserves and is eligible for their basic needs being met per month. But that's all I want to say, guys. If you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and until next time, take care.